The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Our guest today, Tracy Jackson, is the Education Coordinator for the Hennepin Regional Poison Center. She'll be talking about the center's outreach and education efforts in the community. Tracy, thank you for coming today to talk about some of the activities and outreach programs that the Hennepin County Poison Center is involved in. You're the education coordinator, and what are the kinds of things you do on your job?
Well, I'm responsible for basically the public outreach for the Poison Center. So I'm involved with school programs, I'm involved with parenting programs, I'm involved with the media, that kind of thing.
I think one of the things that the taxpayers certainly would be interested in is the fact that Hennepin County is a huge public institution, and it has a variety of programs that really are trying to make sure that people in the community know what's available, not only service-wise, but ways that they can help prevent harm to their children. And of course, that's what you're trying to do with your outreach.
Right, and that's my basic function, is just to let people in the community know that we're there and we're there to serve them and we can be of help to them.
So what do you do? A school would call and you'd go out and do a program for elementary or junior high or high school students?
Right, and we have video programs in place too on, say, children who may be home alone, babysitting younger siblings or something like that. What they need to do if they think someone might have been poisoned, that kind of thing. We have programs in place for younger children too, so they're starting to learn about poisonings and what poisons are and that kind of thing.
I think one of the things that you were showing before we started taping was the Mr. Yuk sticker.
Right.
And Mr. Yuk has really become a household fixture, I think, in
most
homes for very
He's
young
kind of our
children.
awareness symbol. I think when people look at Mr. Yuk, they'll think, oh yeah, poisons, the Poison Center. He's also something that kids can identify with because of his face and his color and that kind of thing, that kids easily can identify him also.
In terms of the education, it's something that parents can say, this is yucky, don't try it. You have an incredible display of things that look like they'd be good to eat, but really could be quite dangerous for young children. And I think most adults don't think of how tempting brightly colored little objects that look like candy or look like chewing gum.
Well, and actually studies have shown that children often poison themselves because they confuse a poison with something that they think is safe. And you can see that with my examples here, how medications here, these are iron tablets, which are very dangerous when in large quantity to children, look very similar to candies, which I have here. They're both sugar-coated, bright colors, very attractive to children. You can see how easily they would confuse the two.
And children see adults popping handfuls of candies. And
children imitating adults and want to do the same thing also.
I was astonished when you spread those things out, when you do see them side by side. It's amazing. And I think parents and teachers and child care providers must kind of do a double take too. The cleanser and the grated Parmesan.
Well, just
think of how closely that packaging resembles.
Right, and so not just pills, but just packaging and colors. These are both used the same way. You shake them when you use them. You can see how easily a child would confuse the two.
And then the glass cleaner, such a pretty color and such an easy handle too.
And kids like the mechanics of things too. They're interested in how things work and squeezing things, and you're right, the bright color is very attractive, but because they're not as coordinated as older adults are, they end up spraying things in their face and their eyes and that kind of thing, that can be a potential poisoning too.
Now I noticed that a couple of the bottles that you've brought do have the child-proof caps. as an adult, those things can be real frustrating to me when I try to open them. Do you think that sometimes parents either leave the lids off or buy the kind that don't have those child-proof caps?
I have to correct you, actually. We call them child-resistant. Nothing has proven to be child-proof. So
they're more adept than adults in many cases.
But you're right. Studies have also shown that kids get into things most commonly because the child-proof cap isn't put back on. Something is sitting open like this for just a few moments on a shelf or something. That's when kids grab them and drink and eat whatever might be inside. But definitely, over the years that child-resistant caps have been available on products, deaths from poisoning have dramatically decreased in children, and a lot of that, I think, can be attributed to child-resistant caps.
What are some of the things that the Poison Center does in addition to the community outreach, helping children and families know what might be potentially dangerous? What happens when you have a hotline number, someone is in crisis, they call you, the child has swallowed something, or in some cases the family pet has swallowed something.
Right. That's our first and foremost function, is simply to help people when somebody might have been poisoned. And most often it's children, which probably isn't surprising, but really anyone might have been exposed to something sprayed in someone's eye or whatever it might be. So we just kind of assess the situation, find out how dangerous this might be, and then kind of talk through first aid or how we need to treat something, whatever the exposure might be. Most often, we just handle things there at home, and everything turns out fine. And occasionally, we might have to refer someone into an emergency room or something like that.
Would you call 911 if you thought it was necessary?
Depending on the severity, that might be a good option. Oftentimes, if somebody needs to go into an emergency room, there's usually enough time to drive someone in and that kind of thing, and things will work out fine. But occasionally, we might need to use 911.
Is your hotline number staffed 24 hours a day? So that
Yes.
someone's always there?
Always there, holidays, weekends, everybody.
And these are regular county staff, they're not volunteers, or are they?
No, all of us are regular staff. We are what we call dedicated to the phones. So when we're there, we do that for 8 hours. That's our job for 8 hours. All of us who answer phones are actually pharmacists by training and then have been certified in poison information.
A little known part of the Hennepin County family that I wasn't aware of at all.
Yeah.
And because you do have this background in pharmacy, obviously then you're really aware of reactions that maybe drugs can have. Do people call you about things like that? Someone's on a new medication, they try something and they have an instant reaction.
Right, and occasionally we'll try and help if someone has kind of drug information kind of questions. But of course our poison hotline is our first priority, but we'll help out when we can.
And you're located in the Hennepin County Medical Center. Does the medical center staff ever use your services?
Oh, sure. We often are contacted by, say, physicians in an emergency room that want to know what something is, or and how, what's the problem with this medication, that kind of thing. And we actually see patients in our emergency room at Hennepin County who come into that emergency room. We'll go up and talk to the patient and that kind of thing. So we'll get lots of calls from nurses and that sort of thing. But also we'll get calls, say, from school nurses who, a child at school might have gotten something on their skin or something like that, or daycare providers, or nursing home personnel might call the Poison Center. It's kind of a variety of people.
It's amazing. How long has this been in operation?
Well, officially there have been Poison Center services in Minnesota for about 40 years. Last year was our 40th anniversary. But our own little Poison Center right in Hennepin County Medical Center has been there probably about 15 years.
And how big a staff do you have to staff for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year?
There are actually about 10 to 12 of us that answer the phones, and then there's administrator and support staff and that kind of thing.
In terms of the outreach to parents and child care providers, do you find that people are, when you go out and speak to a group, that families will say, well, this isn't going to happen in our house, and do you have to give graphic descriptions of horrible situations you've dealt with to help people understand that, as you say, nothing is childproof?
Well, I think people understand that kids can get into anything. I think that's known. But sometimes we have to use more of that graphic example to show sometimes it can be really bad, and things can turn ugly if a certain poison is ingested, that kind of thing. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very often. You know, kids do very well, and it's not a big problem, but occasionally problems do develop. So sometimes we have to kind of say, you know, things can get worse than you think.
Or you give the usual good advice, keep things out of reach of children, keep things covered up.
Exactly. Things in a high locked cupboard is ideal, and using child-resistant caps, and getting things back into storage after you've used them, that sort of thing.
And do you think it helps for parents, too, to emphasize the difference between a vitamin pill and candy? And it's important to check with mom or dad or the child care provider before you're taking something like this?
Right. And just, again, because of this example, you know, trying to teach children that they need to talk to an adult and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, 2-year-old children probably don't do that very well. So it's more of adults have to be more vigilant with younger kids.
What are some of the other kinds of things that the center does? I've heard that sometimes older people who are independent, or even people who are in nursing homes, get mixed up about the kinds of medications or how often they take them. Do you do any work with senior citizens?
That's been kind of a goal of ours, is to try and get out and let people know that we're able to help the entire age spectrum. For an example, we'll say with an elderly person, maybe they doubled up on a medication dose. You know, I took this at 10 o'clock, I forgot about it, took it again at noon. You know, what's going to happen, that kind of thing. And I don't think people always think that the Poison Center is an option to help with that kind of a situation. But of course, children are our bread and butter, is what I call it. They are the bulk of our patient population, and so that's who we have to kind of focus our limited funding on.
Have you, in addition to having the pharmaceutical training, have you had classes in early childhood development, those sorts of things, so that when you're talking to parents you can say this is the typical 2-year-old reaction, even though?
That's been something that I've kind of learned as I've gone along. I'm doing this because I'm interested in those, in education and that kind of thing. I haven't actually formally been educated in that field, but it's definitely something I've learned as I've been working.
Do you think this is a trend in Hennepin County government to do more educating, especially at the medical center? One of our recent programs in the winter of late fall 1994 was a program on the trauma prevention unit and some of the educational outreach that staff there do to help children and young people understand how to prevent head injuries. So it seems to me like the county is really looking at ways that it can not just react to crises, but go out into the community and help people learn to prevent some of these tragedies.
Right, and I see that at the medical center, and specifically because that's where I am all the time, but I see that more and more, that we're trying to reach patients and trying to prevent problems before they develop, and kind of developing more of a rapport with those out in the community, and let them know that we're here to help them even before something happens.
I think that one of the benefits of this kind of outreach too would be to break down some of those barriers. Sometimes Hennepin County doesn't have the best image in the community. And do you find that parents might be embarrassed or ashamed to call sometimes, and they need the reassurance that, hey, it's okay, you're not a bad parent if your child got into this 40 iron pills or whatever, that to help parents understand you can call and you're not going to be blamed for doing something bad.
Right, and I think sometimes people feel like oh, this is because of something, my neglect or something, this has happened. And no, we understand that this is what children do. This is how they learn about the world, by investigating and eating things. And a lot of us are have children of our own, that we understand that this is just what goes along with being a parent. And
that helps develop an empathy with those
exactly
panicky people on the the other end of the line. It was interesting too when we were talking earlier. You talked about people's different reactions. Sometimes people are absolutely frantic and hysterical, and sometimes you said that they're so calm that it worries you that they're not reacting more.
Right, right. And it's so dependent on what a child may have gotten into. But sometimes in a panic mode, people get very excited and anxious and that kind of thing, which is fine, and hopefully we can calm them down and do what we need to do. And then there's that other mode where people don't recognize the danger that might be involved, and we have to kind of shift gears and try and get people excited. So it can kind of go either way.
When you talked earlier too about using the media to help people understand and to know that the Poison Center is there, excuse me, I think of programs like the Emergency 911, and where there is this frenzied week after week situation involving great emergency crews and great teams. Do you think that programs like that help yours because it makes people more aware that there are services available, or do you think it sensationalizes what could be situations that might be better handled in a more low-keyed manner?
Well, it's hard to say, because sometimes I think people are somewhat leery of calling 911 because they don't think it's worthy of this dramatic, exciting event or situation, and that's just not really appropriate. I mean, you should use 911 when you feel you have an emergency on your hands and you need some help. And it might not be a life or death situation, but you need some help. And so it sometimes concerns me that it's only the wild, exciting life and death, high drama that we see on television, when actually it's the mom at home with a young child who just ate something and she doesn't have the number for the Poison Center. She needs help too. And
would 911 ever refer someone to you?
Absolutely. We have what I call the bat phone, but we have a direct line from a 911 operator that will refer people right into the Poison Center if
see, we should have done this on location, gotten a picture of you right there in action.
That's right, yeah. So, and they've all been trained, the 911 operators have all been in the Poison Center. They know when it's appropriate to transfer people over. So I hope people realize that 911 is there no matter really what their emergency might be.
And at the end of the program, we'll put your number up so
Good.
that
Okay.
viewers can copy that down and keep it on the refrigerator door right next to the phone,
Yeah.
so that they'll know. What are some of the things that you're going to be looking at in the future in terms of developing your outreach and continuing your education efforts?
Well, my efforts recently have been to develop programs in other languages. In the Twin Cities, our big emphasis right now has been on Spanish-speaking people, so we have to convert our materials over and translate our materials into Spanish, and also some Southeast Asian languages. So that's been kind of a process for us, a big process.
Well, that's an exciting response of meeting the needs of changing demographics. And how do you feel when people don't speak English and they may be new in a community? Do you find that they are more leery of, do they trust someone who works in a Hennepin County Poison Center? Do you think that they would try to handle these things within their own communities? How can you, as a Caucasian woman, go to the Hmong community, for instance, and be trusted and credible? Or do you have people, gatekeepers in those communities who help you work?
And that's actually been a concern of mine. You know, here I'm not just going to plop myself down in the middle of a small network, you know, a small community and say, well, I'm the authority on poisonings, listen to me. I don't think that's going to be very effective. I've kind of been working through community clinics and people who are already in place, who have already started programs in reaching these people that we would like to reach also, and kind of sit on the coattails of others. But I think that's been a good way for us to do it.
Certainly.
Right, and I know that our big, huge medical community here is probably very overwhelming, that to do it more on a one-on-one level, say in a community clinic or a community location, is going to be more effective than just saying we're the authorities on this and
well, and
call
especially
us.
when you have brochures that are in the language that people are most comfortable with. What about people who don't read very well, whether it's English or their own language?
And that's sort of where Mr. Yuk comes into play also. He's, again, our kind of our awareness symbol that people who aren't reading very well can still understand that this is where they can get help about poisonings, as long as they're taught who he is and what he means. So I feel that that's a good way for us to let them know that we're here and we're able to help them.
It's a universal.
Exactly, exactly.
I'm wishing we had a sticker, one of those Mr. Yuk stickers to show right now, but again, we'll put it on at the end of the program. Are those kinds of things available? If a child care provider who's watching or a parent would like to have a bunch of Mr. Yuk stickers to put on the cleanser instead of the Parmesan, can we call?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Our materials are available. If someone's in a teaching situation or in a daycare setting or whatever, our materials are available to them free of charge. And they just need to call the Poison Center. And they can call the number right on Mr. Yuk, our regular phone line, to get help, and we'll send them what we can.
It's, again, an amazing look at some of the behind-the-scenes activities of Hennepin County. Do you have any passionate advice for people on when you get into kind of your didactic mode, what you would like to recommend to parents, child care providers, other adults working with children, other than common sense and...
But you know, it all comes back to that. It all comes back to the basics about, first aid, and we all think you just have to watch children, young children, vigilantly, and things need to be put back into a safe storage place. That would be my number one push. Is things, once you're done using them, whatever it might be, medications or cleaning products or whatever, caps need to be put back on and put back into a safe place as soon as possible.
What about parents whose instant reaction after they know the child is going to be okay to punish the child for doing something that's probably developmentally pretty appropriate? Mm-hmm. How do you help parents understand that it's not something that deserves a spanking?
Yeah.
Or
and I think maybe when I think that I'm on the phone and I'm dealing with that kind of situation, I think parents just like to know that, you're probably the 80th call we've gotten today about a parent with a small child who's done something very similar to this. This is just what kids do. That's why we're here. That's why the community needs us, and that's why we're funded, is because of that kind of situation. So they're dealing with what every other parent has gone through also.
And just be grateful and vigilant. 80 calls a day. Now that's an astounding statistic. Do you have some statistics on how many calls you get a day, a week, a year?
All of our actual exposures are documented. We don't keep track of who's calling, but we just document what kids are getting into and how they handle things and how we treat them. And we handle roughly between 80 and 100 exposures each day. 60% of those are children under the age of 5, which probably isn't surprising, and the bulk of that is kids right around the age of 2. And our call volume, or the numbers of cases, increases more in the summer, just when kids get outside and find a whole other world of things to get into.
Plants and
exactly,
all kinds of
mushrooms, all that kind of stuff.
Lock them away. Well, this has been absolutely a fascinating discussion about some of the things that are going on at the Poison Center and your outreach. Thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And we will put the number up so people can call if there's an emergency or if they have questions.
Exactly. We're there just to give information too, so call anytime.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
The Hennepin Regional Poison Center performs a valuable community service. Thank you, Tracy Jackson, and thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.